It started as a typical evening with friends. Daniel and I had hosted these casual dinner parties before, inviting our usual group, a mix of old college friends and some of my coworkers. The atmosphere was lighthearted, the wine flowing and laughter filling the room. Daniel had always been the quieter one in our group, the steady presence who didn't seek attention, but had a warm, subtle humor that balanced out the more outspoken personalities. I loved that about him, but I sometimes worried he got overshadowed in settings like these. The night began smoothly. Daniel grilled steaks while I handled sides in the kitchen, and soon we were all seated around the table, plates piled high, joking and reminiscing. At first, the teasing was good-natured, harmless jokes about old college stories and embarrassing moments we all shared. But at some point, the conversation shifted, and Daniel became the focus. It started with a small comment from one of the guys, Eric, who had always been the loudest in the group. "Daniel, man, you're the only guy I know who irons his shirts every morning. My wife would kill to have that kind of attention to detail." The group laughed, and I saw Daniel's polite smile falter for a moment. "I like looking put together," he said lightly, trying to shrug it off. "It's cute," one of the women added with a smirk. "You're so domesticated, Daniel. Sarah's got you trained, huh?" I laughed along, not thinking much of it. "Hey, I'm not complaining," I joked. "At least I never have to nag him to pick up his socks." The group erupted into laughter again, and I noticed Daniel's jaw tighten slightly as he stared down at his plate. From there, the comments snowballed. Someone brought up how Daniel preferred quieter hobbies like gardening and cooking, which spiraled into a discussion about how he wasn't like typical guys. "Daniel's the kind of guy who'd rather bake a pie than fix a car," Eric said, raising his glass in mock tribute. "Here's to redefining masculinity." I chuckled, thinking it was all in good fun, but Daniel's smile had disappeared entirely. "Hey, at least he's in touch with his feelings," another friend chimed in, patting Daniel on the shoulder. "We need more guys like that, right?" The table roared with laughter again, but this time, Daniel didn't even attempt to join in. Instead, he placed his fork down deliberately and looked around the table. "You know what?" he said suddenly, his voice steady but loud enough to cut through the chatter. "I've had enough." The laughter stopped abruptly, and everyone turned to him, startled. "Enough of what?" Eric asked, half laughing, as if Daniel were joking. "Enough of being the punchline," Daniel snapped, standing up from his chair. "I get it, okay? I'm not your idea of a real man. I don't chug beer or talk sports, and apparently that makes me fair game for all your jokes." The table fell silent, and I stared at Daniel, stunned. "Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to sit here and listen to this?" he continued, his voice shaking slightly. "And to hear my own wife laughing along like it's all okay?" My stomach dropped at his words, guilt washing over me in an instant. "Daniel, I didn't—" "Don't," he interrupted, holding up a hand. "Just don't." He looked around the table, his gaze lingering on each of our friends. "I've been nothing but kind to all of you. I've listened to your stories, laughed at your jokes, and treated you with respect. And this is how you repay me? By tearing me down for being myself?" No one said a word. The room was thick with tension, and Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "I hope it was worth the laugh," he said. "Because I'm done." With that, he turned and walked out of the dining room, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. I sat frozen, my mind racing with everything I could have said but didn't. I'll go talk to him," I mumbled, excusing myself from the table. But as I headed toward the bedroom where Daniel had retreated, I couldn't shake the image of his face. The pain, the frustration, the betrayal. For the first time, I realized how deeply the night's jokes had cut him, and how my laughter had only added to the wound. When I found Daniel in the bedroom, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, his back to the door, staring at the floor. His shoulders were tense, his hands clasped tightly together. I hesitated for a moment before stepping inside and softly closing the door behind me. "Daniel," I began cautiously, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't look up. "What do you want, Sarah?" His tone was calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet anger simmering just beneath the surface. "I want to talk," I said, moving closer. "About what just happened." "There's nothing to talk about," he replied. "You made it pretty clear where you stand." His words stung, and I felt myself bristle. "That's not fair," I said, crossing my arms. "It was just some jokes, Daniel. Everyone was laughing. It wasn't meant to hurt you." He let out a hollow laugh, finally turning to face me. His eyes, usually so kind, were sharp and filled with hurt. "Not meant to hurt me?" he repeated. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to sit there and be the butt of every joke? To hear people mock who you are and then watch you, the person who's supposed to have my back, laugh along with them?" I opened my mouth to respond, but he wasn't done. "It's not just tonight, Sarah," he said, his voice rising. "This has been building for a long time. Every time we're with your friends, it's the same thing. They make fun of me for being different, for not fitting into their idea of what a man should be, and you just sit there and laugh like it's okay." "That's not true," I argued, though my voice sounded weak even to me. "I don't think it's okay. I didn't mean—" "Then why didn't you say anything?" he interrupted, standing up now, his frustration spilling over. "Why didn't you stop them? Or at least not join in?" I took a step back, stunned by the intensity of his words. I didn't think it was that serious," I admitted. "I thought you could handle it. I didn't realize—" "That's the problem," he said bitterly. "You didn't think. You didn't realize. And now I'm standing here wondering if you even respect me at all." "Of course I respect you," I said quickly, tears starting to form in my eyes. "Daniel, I love you. I didn't mean to make you feel this way." He shook his head, letting out a deep sigh. "It's not about whether you love me, Sarah. It's about how you show it. Love isn't just about what happens when we're alone. It's about what you do when we're with other people. And tonight you showed me that you're willing to laugh at my expense to fit in." I felt a lump form in my throat as his words sank in. He was right. I had laughed. I had let it happen, not once thinking about how it made him feel. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I really am. I didn't mean to hurt you, Daniel." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression softening slightly but still filled with pain. "I appreciate the apology," he said quietly. "But this isn't just about tonight. This has been happening for a while, and I've tried to brush it off, to let it go. But I can't anymore, Sarah. I'm tired of feeling like I'm not enough. For your friends. For you." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You are enough," I said quickly, stepping closer to him. "You're more than enough. I've just been blind, and I'm so sorry for making you feel like you aren't." Daniel's shoulders slumped, and he sat back down on the bed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Sarah," he said, his voice quieter now. "I don't know if I can keep doing this. If you can't stand up for me when it matters, what does that say about us?" I sank onto the bed beside him, the weight of his words pressing down on me. For the first time, I truly saw the depth of the pain I had caused, and it terrified me. After the tense outburst at the dinner table, I followed Daniel to the hallway, desperate to fix things before they spiraled further. Our friends sat awkwardly in the dining room, their laughter now replaced by uneasy murmurs. I could feel their eyes on us, but at that moment, all I cared about was stopping Daniel from walking out. "Daniel, wait," I said, catching his arm as he reached for his coat. "You can't just leave. Let's talk about this." He turned to me, his expression a mix of anger and exhaustion. "Talk about what, Sarah? How I've been the group's punching bag all night? How my own wife laughed along with everyone else?" "I'm sorry," I said quickly, lowering my voice to keep the conversation as private as possible. "I didn't realize it was bothering you so much. It was just joking around." Just joking around? He repeated, his voice sharp. Do you even hear yourself? You think it's fine because it wasn't directed at you. But it wasn't a joke to me, Sarah. It was humiliating. I opened my mouth to argue, but the look on his face stopped me. He wasn't just upset. He was hurt in a way I hadn't seen before. Let's go back in, I pleaded. I'll make sure they stop. We can enjoy the rest of the night together. Daniel shook his head firmly. No, Sarah, I'm done with this night. And I'm done pretending that this is okay. I'm leaving. I stood frozen as he grabbed his coat and walked out the door, the sound of it closing echoing in the hallway. My cheeks burned with shame as I turned back to the dining room, where our friends were still seated, shifting uncomfortably. Is he okay? One of them asked hesitantly. He just needs some air, I said, forcing a tight smile. I think we're going to call it a night. Thank you for coming. I rushed through clearing the table and ushering everyone out, their attempts to reassure me only adding to my embarrassment. By the time I got home, Daniel was already there, sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. Daniel, I started, stepping into the living room. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I really didn't. He didn't look up. Sarah, do you have any idea how long I've felt like this? His words took me by surprise. Like what? Like I'm not enough, he said, finally lifting his head to meet my gaze. Not for your friends, not even for you sometimes. Tonight was just the breaking point. I've kept quiet for so long, trying to let it roll off my back, but I can't anymore. It's exhausting. I felt my chest tighten. Daniel, that's not true. You are enough. You're more than enough. I don't know why I laughed tonight. I wasn't thinking. But it doesn't mean I don't respect or love you. He sighed heavily, leaning back into the couch. It doesn't feel that way. When I needed you to stand up for me, you didn't. You sat there laughing at me with everyone else, and I can't stop replaying it in my head. Tears welled up in my eyes. I know I failed you tonight, and I hate that I made you feel that way. I wasn't trying to belittle you, Daniel. I love you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Daniel's expression softened slightly, but the hurt in his eyes didn't fade. It's not just about tonight, Sarah. This has been happening for a while now. Little comments, jokes at my expense, moments where I feel like I'm the odd one out. And I keep wondering, if you can't respect me in public, how can I believe you respect me at all? His words hit me like a punch to the gut. You're right, I admitted, my voice trembling. I haven't done enough to show you how much I value you, and I'm so sorry for that. I didn't realize how much my actions, my inactions were hurting you. But I'll change, Daniel. I'll prove to you that you matter more to me than anyone else. He shook his head slightly, his voice quiet but firm. I want to believe that, Sarah. I really do. But I don't know if I can. Right now I need time to figure out if this is something we can fix, or if it's always going to feel like this. The finality of his words left me speechless. I watched him stand and walk to the bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where he had been sitting. For the first time, I realized just how deeply I had failed the man I loved. Not just tonight, but in ways that had been building for months, maybe even years. And now I wasn't sure if love alone would be enough to repair the damage I had done. The aftermath of that night at dinner marked a turning point in our relationship. Daniel's outburst had been a wake-up call, not just for me, but for him as well. He wasn't willing to be the quiet, accommodating person who let things slide anymore. Over the next few weeks, he started setting clear boundaries. When friends invited us to similar gatherings, he refused to go. I'm not putting myself in a position where I feel humiliated again, he told me firmly one evening. If they can't respect me, I'm not interested in spending time with them. I didn't argue. I knew he had every right to protect himself, and deep down, I realized how much he had endured without saying a word. The Daniel who once went along with everything was now standing up for himself, and though it hurt to see him withdraw, I understood why he needed to. At first, it felt awkward to navigate social events without him. Friends would ask where Daniel was, and I'd offer vague excuses, ashamed to admit the truth. But as time passed, I began to reflect more deeply on what he had said that night. He wasn't just angry about the jokes or my laughter. He was hurt because I hadn't shown him the respect and support he deserved. I had let him feel small in front of others, and that betrayal had cut deeper than I'd realized. Determined to change, I started making deliberate efforts to show him how much he meant to me. I began by apologizing again, not just with words, but with actions. I made a point to prioritize him in ways I hadn't before, asking his opinion on decisions, openly complimenting him in front of others, and standing by him in conversations. When we spent time alone, I reminded him of how much I admired his kindness, his intelligence, and his quiet strength. I wanted him to know that I saw him for who he was and loved every part of him. In public, I became more aware of my behavior. If someone made a joke at Daniel's expense, I shut it down immediately, making it clear that I wouldn't tolerate any disrespect toward him. Slowly, I began to see the tension in him ease, though I knew the wounds from that night wouldn't heal overnight. The process was slow and humbling, but it taught me an important lesson. Love isn't just about the big gestures. It's about showing up every day, in every interaction, to make your partner feel valued and secure. Daniel deserved that, and I was determined to give it to him. Bit by bit, we began rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. While the memory of that dinner still lingered, it became a reminder of how easily carelessness could hurt, and how important it was to never let it happen again. In the months after the dinner, Daniel and I slowly began to find our footing again. It wasn't easy. His outburst that night had exposed wounds I hadn't realized were there, and I knew rebuilding trust and respect would take time. Daniel held firm to his boundaries, and for a while, he avoided social gatherings altogether. "I'm not ready to face them yet," he admitted one evening, when I asked if he wanted to join me at a coworker's party. "I just need to be in spaces where I feel valued." I didn't push him. Instead, I focused on the spaces where we could reconnect. Long walks, quiet evenings at home, and open conversations that allowed us to talk through the pain of that night. "I don't want you to feel like you have to prove yourself to me," I told him one evening as we sat on the couch. "I see you, Daniel. I respect you. And I'm sorry for not showing that when it mattered most." He nodded, his expression softening. "I believe you're trying, Sarah. And that means a lot. But it's going to take me some time to fully let go of what happened." I understood. The memory of that night still stung for both of us, but instead of letting it define our relationship, we used it as a turning point. I began making conscious efforts to show my support for Daniel, both privately and publicly. In moments where he felt unsure or undervalued, I stepped in to reassure him. If friends or colleagues made lighthearted jabs, I didn't laugh along. I stood by him, making it clear that his feelings came first. Over time, he began to trust that I had his back, even in challenging social dynamics. Daniel, too, found ways to reclaim his confidence. He leaned into the things he loved, gardening, cooking, and his quiet hobbies, without apologizing for not fitting into someone else's idea of masculinity. I watched him grow stronger, more self-assured, and it made me realize how much strength it took for him to stand up that night and demand the respect he deserved. Though the incident left a lasting mark on our relationship, it also deepened our understanding of each other. I learned that respect isn't just about what you feel in your heart. It's about how you express it in your actions, especially when others are watching. The experience taught me that what may seem like harmless jokes can cut deeply when they target someone's identity or self-worth, especially when those jokes come from the people they trust most. Love in private is important, but love in public, respect, support, and standing by your partner is just as essential. Daniel and I are stronger now, but we both carry the memory of that night as a reminder. Our words and actions matter. They can build someone up or tear them down, and in a partnership, it's our responsibility to choose the former every single time. Начало формы. Конец формы.